China gave the world death and destruction. India gave vaccine. Everything that America uses is manufactured in China. And most of China's money comes from trade with America. Most of China's technology is stolen from America. And social media says that he communicated America's tough stand because Joe Biden told them, as per social media reports, that, we know that you guys are behind all this. Jai Hind, friends. I'm Major Gaurav Arya and you're watching the CHANAKYA Dialogues English. Like this video, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to press the bell icon. Behind everything that is going on in our near neighborhood, as far as Egypt or the Israel-Hamas war, the Houthis, Iran, Maldives, you name it, ladies and gentlemen, behind everything stands China, slowly manipulating terrorist groups in small countries, dictatorships, sheikdoms, like a puppeteer. And today I'm going to expose China and tell you what exactly China is doing and what has happened. Recently there were elections in Taiwan. And what happened in the elections was that a candidate, whose name and whose brief profile, his background I will discuss a bit later, he came back to power and China did not like this. And you know what China said? The Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was in Cairo, and to his counterpart, Egyptian counterpart, in front of him, he said to the media that anybody who works against the interests of China, who tries to break China, will be punished. So here he's trying to tell Taiwan, and this was asked directly because Taiwan had just very recently held their elections and a winner was declared, and this is something that the Chinese Communist Party could not digest. And why is that? Why is the Chinese Communist Party not able to come to terms with the Taiwanese election? First of all, you all know about the One China policy, and the Chinese government is very prickly about it in the sense that anybody who speaks against the policy is considered to be an enemy. And Joe Biden has also pretty much agreed to the One China policy by saying that, we do not seek Taiwanese independence. And what does that mean? When the President of the United States says that we do not seek Taiwanese independence. Now, what is happening is, I think India is the only country in the world, and correct me if I'm wrong, India is the only country in the world that is taking on China head on. Whether it is a military confrontation along the line of actual control or economic confrontation, India seems to be the only country. Even the United States of America has taken a step back, and I will tell you why. Because you see, what is happening is that USA's and China's interests have converged and have been converging for over 3 decades now. More, but yes, certainly for the past 3 decades, especially economic interests. Everything that America uses, or almost everything that America uses, is manufactured in China. And most of China's money comes from trade with America. Most of China's technology is stolen from America. Without America, there is no China, and without China, there is no America. That is the kind of love-hate relationship that they both have. Now, what is happening in the larger geopolitical context, ladies and gentlemen? Both these countries do not want to fight with each other. America does not want a war with China, and China certainly does not want a war with America. But both are not averse to using third parties to wage war. In strategic terms, we call this culpable deniability. So here is a scenario. China will use Iran, China will use North Korea, China will use Pakistan. But in the context of the Middle East and in the context of West Asia, as we in India like to call it, China will use Iran, which will use the Hezbollah, the Hamas and the Houthis, right? To create an atmosphere of terror, of an unsettling sort of a social and economic environment where people feel scared, people are afraid, and then people look to China for stability. This is something that Iran has been doing for China. In this particular case, as I mentioned before, the US does not want to fight China and China does not want to fight the US, right? But the Chinese Communist Party actually wants the United States of America to get involved in another war. And if it does, it would mean that America is involved in 3 simultaneous wars. Now, America has been heavily funding the Ukrainians against Russia, and it's gone to hundreds of billions of dollars. It is only very recently that the Americans have said, hey, Zelensky, you might want to take a step back because the Congress is not approving it and the Senate is making faces, etc. But 2 years back, America was the one which was egging Zelensky to fight the Russians. Don't worry, this is a limitless support. Zelensky was welcomed like a war hero. He was welcomed to the White House where Joe Biden and Jill Biden welcomed him. He was given a state visit. He was given several covers on the Time magazine. His face was plastered on the covers. And he was made out to be some sort of a David versus Goliath sort of a thing happening between Russia and Ukraine. But the fact of the matter is that Russia did everything it could to avoid confrontation. And it is the American military machine or the American, let us say, the armament companies, not exactly the military machine, but the armament companies. And I said military machine because they're very closely joined at the hip with these weapons manufacturers. They wanted war because they wanted to sell their weapons. Now what happened was that now America started spending on Ukraine. And suddenly come 7th of October, Hamas attacks Israel. And America gets involved in another war. Now, do you think for a moment that if this is China's plan, 7th of October is something that China wanted and China approved and China gave a go-ahead to Iran for? Think about it. What happened? Now, Russia attacks Ukraine. Why does Russia attack Ukraine? Because Ukraine says that we want to join the NATO. And Russia fears NATO forces coming bang on its border because Russia touches Eastern Europe. And it's going to be very, very unpleasant for the Russians if NATO comes on its doorstep. So, maybe, and this is conjecture on my part, I'll admit it is conjecture, China says something to the Russians. China triggers a crisis where Russia attacks Ukraine. And Ukraine had it coming. Definitely Ukraine had it coming. Number two, they wait for some time and then they activate their elements on 7th of October in which Hamas attacks Israel. America gets involved. The third thing is going to happen is that now what they are doing is they want America to attack Iran. That is what the Chinese plan is. So what do? They activate the Iranians and tell the Iranians, right, to unleash Houthi rebels on ships from various nationalities. Now all these ships that are being attacked, and people say almost close to 20-25 ships have been attacked so far in small ways and big, whether it's a boarding of the ship or a missile strike or a drone strike. But they say that, more than 2 dozen ships have been attacked. That is what the data says. Now, different people, different data, but this is what I've read. So I'm sharing this data with you now. Look at the analysis, look at the background, what exactly has happened. What has happened, ladies and gentlemen, is that I would have understood, though I would still condemn it and call it absolutely criminal, but I would have understood if an Israeli ship was being attacked because the Houthis did not like the Israelis. The problem is they're attacking every ship. They're attacking every ship. So what does America do? America forms a coalition and very soon America and the UK together, because they have aircraft carriers and they have assets, they start bombing Houthi positions. And this war goes out of control. This is exactly what China wanted, and America is playing, exactly as per China's playbook. America will get involved in a larger confrontation because Joe Biden actually called up the Iranians. And I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe that threats were exchanged. That is what social media is saying. When I'm saying I'm not sure, it means that I cannot corroborate the news. There is no, from my side, I cannot quote a certain news story saying that, these kind of words were exchanged. I cannot do that. But as a matter of fact, Joe Biden did speak to the Iranians. And social media says that he communicated America's tough stand because Joe Biden told them, as per social media reports, that, we know that you guys are behind all this and you will suffer. So let us say this war spreads from Israel, Hamas to Yemen, Syria, and goes all the way to Iran. Suddenly the Middle East is up in flames and America is involved in 3 wars. Eastern Europe and the complete Middle East. And the Middle East is in flames again. This is exactly what China wants. So this brings America down, it brings China up. Another thing that China does not like about these Taiwanese elections is William Lai, who's a doctor turned politician, and this is the 3rd time that he's winning elections on the trot. The Chinese think of him as a separatist. He's not actually a separatist. But he's the kind of guy who will take a middle path and say, hey, we're not talking about separation from China and we're not talking about reunification with China. What we are saying is that we have a sovereign identity. Now, this is not music to the Chinese ears. This is not something that China likes or appreciates. China wants people kowtowing in front of it. China is a power junkie. So what China will want is a Taiwanese politician who will say, hey, Taiwan is always part of the People's Republic of China. Come on, come inside. Take over our land, take over our people, take over all our assets. We are Chinese. Now, there's a long history. Mao Zedong, Chiang Kai-shek, the fight between the two, civil war, how Chiang Kai-shek left mainland China, he came to, Taiwan. And then Taiwan actually, they call themselves Chinese. They say we are the true Chinese. That is what the fight is about. So, his father, William Lin's father, was a miner. He used to work in the mines. And this guy now becomes, he's going to take over again for the third time. And China does not like this. Now, in between all this confusion, what is happening? In between all this confusion, ladies and gentlemen, what has actually happened is the rise of India. And this takes off from COVID times, by the way. From COVID times. Right? Everybody expected India to roll over and admit defeat because thousands of Indians were dying. And according to quote-unquote popular perception in the West, India does not have the infrastructure, does not have this and that and medical excellence, etc. India was the one that came up and gave the world vaccines. China gave the world the virus. The COVID virus is a Chinese virus. China gave the world death and destruction. India gave vaccines. And India gave vaccines to more than 80 countries, many of them free of cost. And India ensured that more than 1 billion people in India, almost 1.25 billion, were vaccinated. This is the largest vaccination program on earth for any country, one particular country. But India did it. And we also gave, so you see, by giving vaccines and providing aid, whether in a hurricane or a flood or an earthquake, India is the first one to reach. India is like the world's first responder now. The world dials 911 and India responds. That is how it is for the world now. So what happened was that during the G20, something very peculiar happened. Prime Minister Modi walked up and says that I think it's time for the African Union to become part of G20. So 55 countries neglected, some of the poorest of the poor countries in the world with the bare minimum infrastructure, very poor education levels and health levels, suddenly becomes part of G20. And India is well on its way to become Vishwaguru, right? Or the leader of the world. And how do you become the leader of the world? By standing up for the poor, standing up for those who cannot stand for themselves. This is exactly what India did. In the middle of all this, ladies and gentlemen, is the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. And if you see the map, you'll realize that it is a BRI killer. I have no other words for this except for the fact that it is a BRI killer. The Belt and Road Initiative. It had to happen. And this project was not announced in G20. It was simply reiterated. It was announced much before. And suddenly, if you chalk out, this complete BRI route, which is funded by China, and this, India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor route, which is funded by a whole lot of countries, including India, and then plot where the wars are happening. Plot the corridor, plot where the wars are happening, then you will realize why China wants these regions unsettled so that BRI has unhindered access. So ladies and gentlemen, in short, in a nutshell, this is what it is. It is China through proxies, through terrorist organizations, through sovereign countries, trying to control geopolitics and geoeconomics of the world and pushing America towards another war. Will there be a war with Iran? I don't know. I've been wrong before, and it'll be wrong for me to, put out a bet here and say that, hey, I believe there will be a war, but let me tell you that Iran is doing its best. At China's behest, Iran is doing its best to pull America into another war, the third war that the United States of America will be involved in if, unfortunately, this war happens. With this, I come to the end of this video now for question and answers. So now, ladies and gentlemen, for the question and answers, we have only one question chosen for the day. This is Rahul Gautam. UK diplomat visiting POK is shocking and unexpected. Seems we are facing more bitterness from the West very recently. How's India going to handle it? See, there are no absolutes and there are no binaries here. UK is a friend. UK is a close friend. But I've mentioned this many a time before. I mean, you see, it's impossible for your friends not to feel upset when you do well, especially in geopolitics. So your enemies are not just China. Pakistan is neither an enemy nor a friend. Pakistan is not good enough to be an enemy, so I will not say Pakistan is an enemy because Pakistan is absolutely worthless. But China is an enemy, sure, because China means you harm. But it doesn't mean that your friends do not mean you harm. You know, everybody loves an India that would not do anything after 26/11. Everybody loves an India that would not do anything after the Akshardham attack or terrorism in Kashmir or, terrorism in Punjab, 1993 bomb blasts. Everybody loves that kind of India. You know, they feel a certain nostalgia about that kind of India. That's a familiarity, that the Indians will show maturity. So we hide behind maturity. Nobody likes an India that is assertive. Nobody likes an India that says, hey, I think what we need is a surgical strike. Or what we need is to bomb the living daylights out of Balakot. Nobody needs that. The world does not want another power coming up. They've had a tough time managing China and understanding China. They don't want India coming up. And India that, you see, a lot of people said, hey, India can face up to China because India's been doing it. But the way India did it, not many people liked it. So you're going to have Western countries, their ambassadors going to POK and making a comment here and there, just to tell India that, we are also looking at things from a wider prism, etc. This is all messaging to be taken seriously sometimes and not to be taken seriously the other times. Thank you very much for watching this video, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this video, press the like button, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram, Bharat Mata Ki Jai.